Hey folks, Tim McDonough here from Aim High Training Solutions, and I'm back with another video for you to help you and your staff achieve greater success in your business. So in my last video, when we were talking about motivation, one of the topics I had mentioned briefly is performance reviews, or feedbacks, the term I like to use. So I'm going to take that and break it down a little bit further and explain to you how feedback should be run and how a data-driven feedback is going to create a higher level of success for you and your staff. So let's get into it. So right off the bat, what is a feedback? A feedback is a review of an employee's performance over a period of time. Simply put, that's what it is. Now, your feedback cannot be random at any given time. You can't just bump into Sally on the sales floor and say, hey Sally, let's talk about your performance real quick. It's not going to be an effective way to analyze their performance and give them help on achieving the next level of success, all right? So feedback has to be scheduled. Now, there's daily feedback that you can give regularly. There's always an opportunity for you to help your staff improve. There's always opportunity to give an attaboy or an attagirl out to a staff member. Those are fantastic. Those are great uses of your time. However, the more elaborate feedback, the data-driven feedback that we're going to get to here in a minute, needs to be on a scheduled basis. And in my preference and my suggestion to the people that I work with is to have 3 separate scheduled feedbacks throughout the year. You're going to have them on a quarterly, semi-annually, and annual basis. So, how do you perform your feedback? Your feedback has to be an interview-style process. It has to be a question and answer session that is an open discussion style. Feedbacks need to be open dialogue. Feedbacks need to be communicative on both sides. The reason for that is your employee obviously needs to know what they've done well and what you expect them to improve on within the next rating period or before the next feedback session. On the other hand, you also need to know how the business is supporting that employee in achieving their success. Because remember from our previous video, the employee's success should directly correlate to your success as a business, and the inverse should be true as well. Your success as a business should directly correlate to the employee's success. So you need to be able to have a question and answer session, open dialogue with your employees and feedback. Let them tell you what they think is going great. Let them tell you what they think needs to be improved. And you got to check your ego on this one. You have to let them speak. You have to let them know that they can come to you with concerns, because the more sets of eyes you have on a situation, the easier it's going to be, the more effective of a solution you're going to be able to create. So, as I said, they need to be on a scheduled basis, and I recommend 3 separate scheduled basis periods. So quarterly. Quarterly is an informal process. Quarterly is where you can just sit down. You don't need to have anything documented. You don't need to have anything recorded. And you just have an open forum conversation with your staff. You and your employees sit down and you just say, hey, how's it going? How are things? What do you think you've done well in the last quarter? Here's what I've seen you do well. What do you think you can do better on in the next quarter? Here's where I think you can improve. And then you also want to ask those questions. How can I help you improve over the next quarter? Because that's what I want. I want you, if I'm the owner, if I'm the operator, if I'm the manager, I want my employee to achieve great success. Because in turn, obviously that makes us $1 too. So I want them to know I am here for their success, just as much as they're here for mine. Semi-annual basis. Now this one will be documented. Now when I say documented, this is not the official feedback that goes into a record. But the reason you document the semi-annual feedback at the 6-month mark between official feedbacks is because you want something on paper in the middle period to talk to your employee and say, hey Jimmy, hey Sally, here we're at 6 months here. Our last official feedback was 6 months ago. Let's go over what your goals were then and where we think you stand on those goals now. Let's go over what you expected the business to do for you 6 months ago, and are we achieving those goals today? If you are, great. Let's keep it up. Let's keep pushing along. Let's keep on that track, and let's see if we can smash those goals and just make them history, blow past them, and then next year we're going to set a brand new standard. If they're not, okay, how do we get back on track? We've taken a left-hand turn somewhere. We need to fix ourselves back up. So here are the things that I think we should do. We develop an action plan for them to put them back on pace and get them towards those goals that you set 6 months ago. Or maybe it's the business. Maybe there were roadblocks. Maybe there were time wasters that were hindering your employees' ability to succeed, or hindering your employees' ability to push the business forward. Maybe there's procedures that need to be changed. And 6 months ago, you and your employee talked about it, but they haven't been adjusted yet. So now this is your point where maybe it refreshes your memory and says, oh, that's right. 6 months ago, we did say we were going to put in that new tow equipment so that we can move our manufacturing equipment around faster and more efficiently. That's a great idea. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you reminded me of that. So now, the next 6 months, we're going to work on making sure we have that equipment in here to make your job easier, to make you more efficient. Now that we understand the semi-annual feedback or the 6-month feedback, let's talk about the annual feedback. Now, the annual feedback is your goal setting session with your staff member. And remember, every staff member, no matter what level in the chain they are at, needs to receive each of these feedbacks on an annual basis: the quarterly, the semi-annual, and the annual. If you leave one of these out, what's going to happen is your team is not going to know if they are achieving the standard that you set for them in their initial performance review or their feedback. If they don't know that, they have to assume no feedback is good feedback. It's the same thing that happens when we go to the doctor, right? We go to the doctor, we get tests run, and they say no phone call is a good phone call, right? It means that the news is good, you don't have anything to worry about. Feedback works the same way. If I'm not getting feedback, I'm going to assume I'm not getting feedback because I'm doing everything right. Otherwise, the only feedback I'll be getting would be negative feedback, right? So, feedback on a regular basis is going to allow your employee to know where they stand and how they're doing achieving the goals that you and your employee together set. Annual feedback is the official review. This is the one that is actually going in the record. This is the one that can be reviewed periodically. If you want to go employee promotion time, hey, I want your last 3 feedbacks so that we can review how you've been growing in the business. Or have you been in a stalemate? Have you been stuck for a couple years? You can compare 2019 to 2020 and say, in 2019, you did 3 million in sales. In 2020, you did 3.1 million in sales. So we moved up, but is that percentage of growth acceptable for where you are, for your level of performance that we expected out of you? Those are the things that you can do with your annual feedback. It's your goal setting session. And again, goals have to be set by you and the employee together. It can't be you determining what the goals for the next year are going to be. That's why this has to be an open communication. If your employee doesn't have a say on what is expected of them, then it's just an order. They have no ownership in that. If they don't have ownership, it's going to be a lot harder for them to achieve, which is why interview style, open conversation, periodic feedbacks on a regular basis, scheduled basis. They know clearly, hey, December 24th, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to do my review with my employer, and I'm going to figure out where I stand for the next year. Hopefully I have a good feedback, roll into Christmas with a big smile on my face, and then boom, start the next year, getting ready to get hot, right? Focus on both parties' ability to succeed. Your success as a business is directly tied to their success as an individual. Always, 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 always. I cannot stress that enough, all right? That has to be the point you're getting across. And then based on concrete benchmarks, the review, the data that you use has to be concrete. It has to be real. It has to be able to be pulled from somewhere. If you are just giving reviews based on how you perceive them, but you don't have a number to back it up, or you don't have any information to say, last year you did 3 million, this year you did 2.6, so we had a $0.4 million drop off, what happened? If you don't have those numbers, the feedback is not going to have any effectiveness because it's just going to sound like you're picking things out of the clouds. So, with that being said, how do we get to our concrete benchmarks?